The experience of touring Harlem while simultaneously studying its history in our course, social and historical context of school communities, offers a powerful lens to explore the interplay between historical narratives and contemporary realities. Through visits to iconic locations such as the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, the Harlem Walk of Fame, and the Harlem Hospital murals, our group engaged with Harlem's vibrant legacy of resilience, artistry, and activism. For me, Harlem became more than just my home, but a coveted melting pot of culture, resilience, and hope. This tour illuminates connections to themes from Rhodes Pitt's Harlem is Nowhere, Jacob Lawrence, The Migration Series, Rothstein's The Color of Law, and the Mapping Inequality Project, weaving together a narrative that underscores the enduring significance of Harlem as both a cultural beacon and a site of contested identity.
The first thing I noticed was the Old Harlem Library, which is a Carnegie library, and I like architecture, so that caught my eye. Looking at it reminded me that despite the awful things that some very wealthy people, such as Andrew Carnegie, did, and they were called robber barons for a reason, they were also philanthropists, unlike our current group of billionaires. I felt a sense of agency that underscored the comments of the two women we met at Harlem Hospital. The security guard moved to Harlem to immerse her children in a culture she felt was lacking in the Bronx. And the woman who worked in the original building was very adamant that Harlem had a culture that was for the Black residents of Harlem and that it should not be replaced by outsiders. This theme of agency was something we saw in the Jacob Lawrence murals and also in several of the readings. We had several pedestrian encounters similar to what were described in Rhodes Pitt's. When we entered the old Harlem Hospital building, we spoke to a woman who worked there and who was leaving. She walked outside with us because we were in the wrong building, and we chatted about Harlem. She had lived her entire life there, and she talked about how Harlem was changing, saying, quote, "Harlem is for us." We went next door to the newer hospital building, which is where the Jacob Lawrence murals are located. The security guard looked at us and asked if we were tourists. And we all chuckled and said no, that we were there to see the murals. I remember that Ernest was very engaging, asking the security guard if she lived in Harlem and if so, for how long. She said she was from the Bronx, but that she moved to Harlem when her children were young because she thought it was important for them to live in a neighborhood where they would be exposed to Black culture. Ernest also commented to the security guard that oftentimes people who are from a place don't visit the cultural landmarks in their own hometown that tourists do visit, and that it is important to be a tourist in your own city. Near the end of the tour, we passed St. Philip's Episcopal Church, which is the oldest Black Episcopal congregation in New York City, and which was founded by Black enslaved and free persons who broke away from the racially segregated Trinity Church in Lower Manhattan. We stepped inside to see the service, and then as we left, a young parishioner came outside and invited us to come back in and join the service.
For years while visiting Harlem Hospital, I was unaware of the powerful history held within its murals. It was the photos of the Black nurses and students that resonated with me. They remind me of my friend, Miss Virginia Allen, a surviving Black angel of Seaview Hospital on Staten Island. These remarkable nurses, both at Harlem Hospital and Seaview, broke racial stereotypes and paved the way for legions of minorities to enter medical professions. The Black Angels were also on the front line of the battle against tuberculosis, treating patients of all colors when white nurses declined. My own family has deep roots in this legacy. My father followed my aunt as a medical paraprofessional at Seaview Hospital in the 70s and 80s. Their dedication and the spirit of the Black Angels inspired my cousins to become registered nurses and fueled my own path as a military LPN, psychiatric technician, and later clinical social worker. The Harlem Hospital nurses and the Black Angels of Seaview were contemporaries. They faced the same obstacles and same pervasive discrimination of their time. Opportunities for Black nurses were limited, forcing them into tight-knit communities of support. Their stories, though often untold, are vital chapters in our history, celebrating resilience, courage, and unwavering commitment to care.
I thought about the article on mapping inequality, redlining in New Deal America as I looked around Harlem. Harlem looks very different than what I remember. The Lincoln Housing Project, where a high school classmate of mine lived, is still there, but the area seems sanitized. And maybe that's because of the weather. There weren't a lot of people out. And there's some new apartment buildings that were built to replace some older buildings, but they look very out of place compared to the aesthetic of the older brick and brownstone buildings, some of which I'm sure were built in the 1800s.
Lenox Terrace served as a stark reminder of the systemic barriers documented in Rothstein's work and the Mapping Inequality Project. This location highlighted both the successes of community-driven initiatives and the enduring scars of government-enforced segregation. For most of my childhood, I lived in the Clinton Projects located in Spanish Harlem. For many, Lenox Terrace represented the place to live for those who broke the residential invisible red line barrier that trapped so many others in substandard housing. The digital artifacts and historical echoes that we captured represent Harlem's enduring role as a site of communal gathering and empowerment. The Harlem Walk of Fame, with its plaques honoring luminaries like Langston Hughes and Ella Fitzgerald, reinforced the profound cultural contributions that have defined the neighborhood. Through this walking tour, we observed that Harlem's past is not confined to history books, but is palpably present in its architecture, art, and people, then and now. The connections between our tour and course readings revealed a narrative of resilience and agency, as well as a community that continues to adapt and thrive despite systemic challenges. For example, the Schomburg Center embodied the theme of preserving cultural memory, aligning with Rhodes Pitt's emphasis on documenting Black voices. Small's Paradise and Hacha Bar and Grill highlighted Harlem's social and cultural vibrancy, showcasing the interplay between public and private spaces as explored in the Migration series.
Two things came to mind as we stood on the corner of 135th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard. The first was an event I attended at the Schomburg Center in 2013 to celebrate a book called Bengali Harlem, which was about the South Indian men who settled in Harlem from the 1920s to the 1950s and married Puerto Rican, Black American, and West Indian women. My family's part of that diaspora, and I realized I hadn't been to the Schomburg since then. Directly across the street is Harlem Hospital. I explained to Olawa and Ernest that my paternal grandmother had wanted my mother to give birth to me there, but my mother said no. It turned out that my mother's pregnancy was difficult, and had my mother gone there, I would probably not be alive today. Oh, and I remember our group talking about the fact that people who are of a certain age remember Malcolm X, Adam Clayton Powell, and Frederick Douglass Boulevards as being Lenox 7th and 8th Avenues. I thought about the WHYY Fresh Air story, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America, when we visited the St. Philip's Church. It could be argued that the congregants of the church could have stayed at Trinity Church and continued to worship from the balcony, instead of being allowed to be full participants in the church. They chose instead to move almost 10 miles away, which is a considerable distance considering the transportation that was available 200 years ago, to establish their own congregation. So they segregated themselves, but they did it so that they could elevate themselves. I heard traffic, of course, it's Manhattan, and on some blocks I heard music, but it was not too noisy. It was raining that day and it was a Sunday morning, so that could have been part of the reason for the quiet. I also remember smelling the food from a halal restaurant that we passed. I noticed that we each had connections to Harlem, some stronger than others, and yet I found two things that to me were fascinating. One was how much we didn't know or had never seen, and the other was how excited we were about the places we encountered.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let us resound loud as the rolling sea.
Our exploration of Harlem revealed a community deeply rooted in history, yet dynamically evolving. By connecting our sensory impressions, pedestrian encounters, and observations to the themes of our reading, we crafted a movie that underscores Harlem's significance as both a historical and contemporary cultural hub. This journey deepened my knowledge and appreciation for Harlem's unique role in shaping American identity, reminding me that its story is one of enduring resilience and creativity.